It keeps, yes. You have to keep pushing yes. Are you sure? Yes. Are you positive? Yes. I have to keep pushing yes, yes, yes. And so, with that, who ran the state of Massachusetts? Who wants deflation?
No one.
I don't like it.
Some of us are just rolling up.
All right. That's my fun.
It's definitely one of those like.
Faster!
How old is
It's
that?
going to get your character.
It's a replica.
Oh.
So this is my favorite part, right? Not for children. That's what it says right there. Not for children. It's a toy. Yeah. When I was a youth, they'd give you things like that. Heck, we get a bag of broken glass, and that would be a toy when I was a kid. You guys are a clever generation. You have no. And these car seats. Used to stand in the front seat when I was a little kid. That's true, actually. Yeah, that's very true.
I should remember like on that back dash.
Oh yeah. No one had seatbelts. All right, so back to this. Breaking up the dash. Oh, and steel and steering wheels used to be steel. So when you hit a steering wheel, it was now imprinted on you for the rest of your life. That's actually true too. All right, so back to this. Shades rebel. Massachusetts, they create deflation because, there are debtors, but people with debt, and creditors, the people who collect the debt. If there's deflation, who benefits?
The creditors.
The creditors who ran the state.
Creditors.
The creditors. Just across the border in Rhode Island, what were they doing? They were printing money like mad, creating inflation. Inflation, the value of money drops. What happens to prices? They go up because your money buys less, so prices have to go up. So farmers are getting more money back for their crops, and the value of their debt drops. Who is running Rhode Island? The debtors. So this is the key point. This is actually a really important point. Both states only allow white men to vote. But what kind of state, what state allowed for only white men with a lot of property to vote? Massachusetts. And then therefore Rhode Island allowed for, actually Rhode Island had almost no property requirements. So almost all white men could vote. Now it's not democracy, but the point is this. Rhode Island had democracy. It had more democracy. The issue is how democratic it's going to be. And this is a truism to this very day. Those who want to help groups like the debtors or the poor or the working class, they want more people to vote. The group that want to represent the creditors, and by definition, if you're loaning money, that means you have wealth, because you have extra wealth to loan. The people who don't have money can't loan money. Does that make sense? Of course that's obvious, but you have to remember that. The people that represent that group of people want fewer people to vote. Always, to this day. They want more disconnect between the voters and the population. So what does Shays want when it comes right down to it? More voters. This is a class issue. Democracy is, to his point of view, class. And by the way, therefore, the group that doesn't want voters will say it has nothing to do with class. It's just voting, and we're all voting together. This is a class issue. It always has been. And you can see it to this very day. One political party in the United States is doing everything it can to make it difficult to vote. As much as they can. They're trying to do it in the state of Montana right now. There's a referendum. This is something that comes in the progressive era. And so I'm relating it today. These things that happen then, they keep happening. It's not new. Of course, it's new if you don't know your history. But today, there's a referendum to change Montana state law. Today, Montana state law is to make it as easy as possible to vote. So you can literally go, what do you have to do before you vote? You have to do what? You want to know? You have to register. In Montana, you can register on election day. They want to make it as easy as possible, especially for people who maybe they change address, or like college students who kind of move around. Make it very easy for them to vote. More people to vote. There's a referendum right now to stop that, to make it more difficult, and therefore drop the number of people voting. More people voting helps a certain class. Yeah, this was a big issue for the Republican Party as part of their state convention. They were the ones who got it in. Actually, it passed the legislature, but Governor Bullock vetoed it. So they turned it into a referendum to the people. But the same thing happened in Pennsylvania. It's happening in Pennsylvania right now. It's happening in Texas. It's happening all over the South. To keep people from voting.
How do you keep people from voting now? Like,
You
how
make
do
it difficult.
Make it harder?
You make it harder. You make it much more difficult to vote.
But like how?
You require everyone to have a picture ID. You require, and in some big cities where people don't have driver's license, like Philadelphia, a third of the population don't have driver's license. So I don't have a picture ID.
So like a third wouldn't be able to vote then?
You make it difficult. Yeah.
Slightly off topic. Like without a driver's license and stuff, like how do like bars and stuff like that?
Well, there can be other IDs that people can have, but not necessarily a picture ID. And then also, a significant number of them are elderly, so they don't. Yeah. Does that make sense? New York is almost 40% don't have your driver's license.
Or like everyone here that like
Can't have one. Montana's so much different. We kind of have to driver's license because you can't just simply walk someplace. I'm going to walk to Great Falls. Why don't we do that? Field trip. You guys walk to Great Falls, I'll meet you there. Run to Great Falls. Steady job. You're already ready, aren't you? Bring good shoes. All right, so let's get back to this. It really was about democracy then. More voice. And so Shays, when he was doing this, they want a voice in government. It was only the very elite who were doing this. So what happened was, Shays had to go to debtor's court. He owed debt to merchants. This is pre-bank. There's nothing like a bank as we see it. And he owed a debt. And this is the great thing about the law. And you also get to who writes the laws. If you loan money to somebody else, that's a business decision. That's what it is, right? I loan money to you, you pay it back, I made a good decision. If you don't pay it back, I made a bad business decision. Right? Not if you have the power of the government behind you. In this, merchants were loaning money to people who clearly are in trouble financially and in a hole. They charged really high interest. And then when they couldn't pay it back, they had the government come in. It was a sheriff, don't think in terms of police. They would take people to debtor's court. And at debtor's court, the government, through the court system, could take away all your property and give it to that other person. Not only that, they could send them to jail, called debtor's prison. Does everyone catch what just happened there? Can that happen today? Oh, yeah. The government can come in and protect businesses' loan. But why do you think all these places want it? They want you to borrow money. They get the money. They also have the hammer of government. They can actually garnish your paycheck. They can come in and take part of your paycheck, up to 45% of your paycheck. So, now most people don't even know they can do that. What a great way to run a business, isn't it? Couldn't you run a business where you prey on people who have no money? We'll give you a loan. Who did that? Yeah, I don't know. No same day, or what is it? Check cashing things, those kind of things. Pawn shops. And then what do? Turn around and garnish your paycheck. Yeah. Be careful of debt, people. Be careful of debt. Okay. I have no idea why I glared at you, but why not? So, This is what happened. But here's the issue. Shays was taken to court, and he just saw, right before him, a widow that he knew was sent to prison. And he said, I had enough. I'm not going to do it. He walked right out and rallied his friends, a lot were veteran soldiers. And they rose up and they marched on the debtor's prison and freed everybody. Debtor's prison was basically just a place where they were storing people. And began a revolution. They began to march on Boston. They sent out the militia. The problem was, the militia is made up of what kind of people? The very same people that joined Shays and they joined the rebellion. And they marched on Boston. The only thing that saved Boston, well, before we get to that, merchants, the creditor class, I don't know what else to call them, all the colonies were like, oh my God, this is going to spread to us colonies. And they contributed money to Boston merchants who hired and armed the urban poor of Boston to go fight the rural poor of Massachusetts. You got city slickers versus hicks. And they fought. Insults to both of them. And because it was fall, a lot of the people who joined Shays had to go back to harvest the crops, and they didn't have cannon. The Boston militia won. The merchants won. Just barely. But this sent shockwaves throughout the colonies. The states. Amongst the elite. Now, did I mention Annapolis and Mount Vernon? Yes. Those same people are like, we have mob rule. We have too much democracy. They literally said that. Too much democracy. And that is why the Articles of Confederation allowed for a convention to improve the Articles. We call this the Constitutional Convention. They did not call it that today. 1787, what city did they meet in? No. Philadelphia, Independence Hall. I know everything happens in Boston. But in Independence Hall, now it's named Independence Hall because that's the place where they signed or wrote the Declaration of Independence. They wrote it, the Constitution there. Philadelphia has a lot to be proud of there. It's a big old area to go see Independence Hall. So, Constitutional Convention. And when they went there, these are representatives from all the states. And almost immediately, the majority of them said, we can't change the Articles. Or we just can't reform it. We got to throw it out and get something new. Almost immediately. And a third went home. And so who was left was a very elite group. Their portraits are right here. 53 of them. If you come and look at them, there's a few that look very similar. It's just a red silhouette, so you would have a painting of them. 53 men. In secret. Why did they meet in secret? Well, there's a couple reasons. Oh, I must add, Jefferson wasn't there. I think I said this yesterday. Where was Jefferson? If I didn't say it, he's in Paris. He's the U.S. ambassador to Paris. He had no power. He's in Paris. Really enjoying life. He liked Paris a lot. He was there. His wife had passed away, so he was there with his mistress, a.k.a. slave. Yeah, he is right. They had 5 children. A bunch of redheaded slaves. That's happened all the time. Remember, they did that. Fornication laws, remember? And then John Adams was in London, which I always find fascinating. The 2 most important people of the Declaration of Independence were away. Jefferson was actually very worried about it. He was good friends with James Madison, a lot of letters. Adams was all for it. So they met here. They met in secret. Now, the formal reason they said they met in secret was to avoid special interests. We are not going to be swayed by special interests who want us to write a government for our own good. The special interest was the 53 men. But that sounds like, oh, what a noble reason. It's not true. Think about what it is. Just imagine. You get 53 like-minded people who are told by the government, the Articles, to reform the Articles. And they get together and in secret decide, let's not reform it. Let's throw it out and write our own government that will probably benefit us. What do you call that?
Conspiracy.
It is a conspiracy. And what's the crime? Treason. And they knew it. We might be accused of committing treason, so let's keep it secret. And so they met in secret, and they would go out to the taverns in Philadelphia and just meet little whispering groups and talk about it. This was all done in secret. There are all kinds of rumors are going on, and it doesn't mean that the government's bad, but there's no doubt it's going to benefit those 53 men. At least they thought it would. No doubt. It doesn't make it wrong, but it does make it suspicious. And so when they met, almost immediately, I mean, right away there's a big problem. You can guess. What's the big problem under the table that they didn't want to talk about in the Declaration of Independence?
Slaves.
Yeah. What to do about slavery? What to do about slavery? What did they decide? Later. It'll go away someday. Let's not talk about it. And so it went to the other big problem. Every state had how many votes?
One.
Ah, good. Every state had how many votes?
One.
Woohoo! Can't fool you. That favors what kind of states?
Small population.
Yeah, small population. So are we going to have a government that is more equal to population or with the states? Which way? And almost immediately we have a big state plan and a small state plan. Little column, I'm going to make it. Big state, small state. The big state plan, okay, there's other ideas, but it's soon going to coalesce around the Virginia plan. So let's do the Virginia plan first. What would you rather do? The whole Virginia plan, or do both of them kind of like this said one, this said the other?
Do the whole Virginia plan.
Let's do the whole. Anyone, is that okay with everybody? I can do both. James Madison. Actually, it was proposed by Edmund Randolph, a very powerful family in Virginia. But James Randolph, it was his idea. Good friends with Jefferson, and therefore, this is what we have to get. Madison was the father of the Constitution. Madison. It was his ideas and his also compromises, his idea for compromises, that would become the basis of the United States Constitution. He didn't directly write it, it was kind of Edwin Morris, but it was all Madison. And then after, Madison would write 12 amendments, the first 12 amendments of the Constitution. 10 would be ratified, called the Bill of Rights. That's coming later, too. So, Madison. And what he decided was, what does bicameral mean? A bicameral legislature. What does that mean? 2 houses. 2 houses. An upper house and a lower house. Both by population. So the bigger your state, the more members of both houses. Upper and lower house. Now, immediately, when they got there, they were thinking, no democracy. In fact, I almost forgot to say this. When they were here, a term they used over and over again is we want a better class. A better class of people running the country. A better class. We don't want democracy. Or as they called it, mobocracy. Ruled by the mob. Or my personal favorite, king numbers. Majority, the number of votes. We want a better class. And so there's going to be as many as possible barriers between the mass of people and government, which we still have today. They want this to be elite and strong. The lower house will be chosen by voters. So that's going to be closest to the voters, but remember who votes. In most states, who votes? White men with property, yeah. So it's only the elite vote. And then the upper house is chosen by the lower house. You get it now? The elite who can vote choose the elite for the House, who choose the elite of the elite for the upper house, and then, if any law is to be passed, they both got to agree. They both have to agree. Another barrier. And then it would have to be agreed upon by the executive. There would be an executive, and who chooses the executive? Good guess, but actually the lower. They choose both. The lower house chooses the executive too. That's the Virginia plan. It favors big states, doesn't it? A lot favors the big states. Let's go to the small state plan. It's called the New Jersey plan. William Patterson came up with this idea. Patterson. Once again, it's not his alone. It was other small states, but they coalesced around the New Jersey plan. And this really was simply just a reform of the Articles. Bicameral? No, it's still going to be unicameral. Unicameral, one house. If it's one house, it won't be upper or lower. It'll be just like that. Each state, one vote. Each state gets one vote. Thus favoring the small states. There would be an executive, but who chooses them? Each state gets one vote, and they choose the executive too. This is really not much different than the Articles system. But they have one thing in common. One thing in common. So put it somewhere you can see both of them. The national government, we call federal government, after the Constitution was signed, the national government is supreme over the states. Period. The national government is supreme. If there's any arguments over sovereignty, it's national. Both of them agree to that. So that's basically it. A major fight. And what they would do is a very clever compromise. It has flaws. Our Constitution has some serious flaws. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. It's called the Great Compromise. Then it was called the Connecticut Plan. And this was, remember Roger Sherman, one of the authors of the Declaration of Independence? The Connecticut Plan. And this was really clever. It took bits of both. But one of the things that they're worried about here is that if they choose this form of government, the states have less power. So they wanted to get more power to the states to get it passed, because it had to be approved by the states. And so it would be bicameral. But here is the difference. There would be two houses. The lower house is what we call the House of Representatives. They would be chosen by the voters and serve 2-year terms. So every 2 years is an election. 2-year terms. Every 2 years. And this kind of fits in with that idea after the Revolutionary War. A lot of elections. But then we have the upper house. Oh, almost forgot, I'm sorry. This is by population. The bigger the state, the more members you have. Every state has to have a minimum of 1. At first, it was 50,000 votes per member of the House, but I think you might see a problem. The country kept getting bigger. We ran out of room. So in 1887, they just cut it off. And now we have 435 members of the United States House of Representatives. And every year, there's a census. We have to have a census because you need population. Every year, they just move those 435 around. Everybody has to have at least 1. How many does Montana have? 1. Montana has 1. Who is it? We don't know. I believe I said this before. It's time to know these things. Steve Daines, he's running for the House. He's running for the Senate right now. So there'll be a new member of the House. If you heard that name and you weren't sure, okay, Nas?
No.
I hope you'd heard that name. He has really horrific commercials. He's going to win probably for the Senate, just by the nature of the thing. And so his commercials, he doesn't have to do anything with commercials. He just has to spend his money. So it's him and his family. Beautiful family. And the upper house is going to be called the Senate. Here's the difference. How many members of the Senate does each state get? How many? 2. 2 members of the Senate. And that's like, isn't that fitting in with this? And if there's a tie, the vice president breaks ties. But that's another story. Who chooses them? To alleviate the issue of states, it will go to state assemblies. State assemblies picked up. So each individual state assembly chose the members of the Senate. And they got 6-year terms. And it would be like this till 1913. Then the Constitution was ratified, the 17th Amendment, and that allowed for now the voters of the state choosing Senate. And that's the way it is today. Next, House, Senate, the executive. Is that where we're at? Yeah, executive. Who chooses the executive? Bring on. All right. Who chooses the executive? Madison wanted that, but the states were upset. And so who chooses the president? Kind of. The states kind of do. But somebody within the states. Indirectly, the assembly does. Still chooses him today. Voters don't vote for president. No, they don't. That'd be violating the Constitution of the United States. Voters do not vote for president. When I went and voted for president in 2012, I did not vote, even though it said it on the ballot. The Democrat was Barack Obama, the Republican was whom? Mitt Romney. But I'm not voting for them. I'm voting for somebody else. The little independent dude? No. Huh? That's it. It's chosen by electors in the Electoral College. Every state gets electors equal to the members of Congress. So you add the members of the House plus the members of the Senate, and that's how many electors each state gets. How many electors does Montana have? 1. 3. Members of Congress. We have 2 members of the Senate, 1 member of the House. We have 3. How many members of Congress does California have? A lot. 53 in the House, 2 senators. They have 55 electoral votes. Give you an idea how small Montana is. And that's who chooses. Whoever gets the majority in the Electoral College is president. Madison assumed that nobody would ever get the majority. If no one gets the majority, it goes to the House. And so when Cody mentioned that, that's what they thought. Madison just assumed this. Turned out, no, we got this. In fact, what he thought is the Electoral College will only be around for 1 election. Madison was assuming 1 man would be elected president and the Electoral College would die. Who was the 1 man that he assumed would be elected president?
Hanson.
George Washington.
That question is a trick question.
That's not a trick question at all. Hanson was president of the Artists' Confederation. When you answer quick without thinking, then it becomes a trick. That's the definition for questions. And I know you don't shake your head. You answered quick. Yeah. Yeah, kind of. The Great Congress. And it's really clever. The problem is we're stuck with this. State assemblies choose the electors. Still do to this day. Now, By the 1830s, more and more states allowed the voters to vote for a chosen group of electors. So let me give you an example from 2012. 2012, you had the two main parties, and by the way, we have to have two parties, and I'll tell you why tomorrow. It's just the way the Constitution was framed. We're only going to have two parties. But what happened is the state assembly let the two parties pick their electors. So the Democratic Party chose 3 diehard supporters of Obama. The Republican Party chose 3 diehard supporters of Romney. And so when I went and voted, I'm voting for either the 3 electors for Obama or the 3 electors for Romney. And then it's winner take all. Whoever gets the majority gets all 3. Who got the majority in Montana? Romney. A Democrat, even though Montana's actually pretty split, we're kind of a weird state. A Democrat has not won the presidency in Montana, the electorate, since 1992. I mean, it's really weird. We voted as a state for Romney for president, and then a Democrat for governor, and a Democrat for the Senate, and attorney general. I mean, we're a very weird state. Yeah, it's always weird. How can someone go in and vote for Romney and then for Bolton? I find it fascinating. We'll finish this tomorrow. Cody, I'm sorry for picking on you, but you say things so quick you don't think about it.
That's not George Washington.
And you were thinking a trick right away. You're immediately thinking, that must be a trick.
Well, that's what I thought. That's why it's kind of.
Yeah, no, I was thinking like Leo.
Your first instinct was what? Hannah, who had their hands up? Yeah. Roger Sherman came up with the idea that everybody just did. Constitutional Convention. This is all being done. This is all part of the debate. And you go to the room, you would not believe how small it is. It's about a third the size of this room. And they're all packed in there. It's pretty amazing. And these small rooms, it's hard to do. Sure, these. And somebody one side. And I didn't say anything out. We didn't get enough down. So what I like, do you kind of understand now, or do you need?
When you explained it,
Okay, just use about 3 sentences to explain what it is, and then that last sentence explain what it led to.
okay, reading the instructions.
I know, but the reason I did that was because we did one before, so.
Okay.
And we got, well, I'm gonna give you another chance.
Makes more sense. And then like first to it, the declaration, I had
You didn't know what they were?
like no, well like I knew what they were, like I didn't do.
Same deal, and what it is, and the basics.
And
It would be ridiculous, but that's what I looked at. I thought something happened.
yeah.
There was some disconnect. We didn't understand it. We're out of time. Minds froze. That happens a lot on that first real labs. So I'm going to give you another opportunity to do them on your own. All right. Do them all. Yeah, be right on your own. Turn me on Friday. Is that okay? Is that a deal? Now, you're not going to get full credit, but I'll give you a lot. There was some disconnect. There really was. I could tell. It was like, no. And the first time we did it, I want good ones. Actually, so too.
I'm the one I shanked.
Well, I do on the first one, but then after that,
Yeah,
after a while,
that's
I
the
don't.
second one, I think. How far in did you get? Because I just got to the point where he